Well, it is Friday the 22nd. Jesus. Just kind of watching the calendar flicking by. I'm looking forward to Sunday, the 24th, because that's my dear brother, in my partner in crime, Waddy Wachtel's birthday. And so I can't wait to give him a shout on Sunday and wish him a happy birthday. He's a really special person in my life. I love Waddy dearly, and I'm so loving being in a band with him, with the immediate family. To have he and Russ and Cooch all together is like a going back in time for us, because like we did the late 70s James Taylor tours with that, and that was probably one of the finest bands I've ever been on the road with David Sanborn and Don Grolnick, and it was amazing. It was just amazing. And then with the immediate family, we have Steve Postel has joined us, so it's a complete little package. But I was thinking about what to do today, and a lot of people have written to me about this, and so I thought I would get my hands on it before my chops are completely gone. And it's so frustrating getting in and playing and just realizing, every day that just not working takes its toll on your chops. It's really, really hard. As much as playing as I'm trying to do, practicing and everything at home, it's just not like getting together and cranking up in an amp and going for it with the cats. So, but today I'm going to visit Jackson Browne. I've known Jackson since the early 70s. It was actually very kind of funny. When I got called to do his first album, I really when I got this call, I said, it's this artist, Jackson Browne. And I thought he was going to be a black artist at that point. That was just at that time, that was that kind of a name, Jackson Browne. He's starring in Superfly. It was like, and I go in and here's this kind of skinny white dude in there. So, but I'm thinking, the more I do these, the more I really want to pay credit to everybody that's involved as much as I can on all of these projects that I'm kind of honoring. And so I've dug up information on Jackson's first record, and I'm just going to run that by you before we actually play it. And I've taken notes because there's a lot of people really to credit on these things. Now, I never could figure out what the title of that record was. Is it just Jackson Browne, or is it Saturate Before Using? Because the cover was one of those water bags you would hang on the front of your car while driving through the desert to keep your water slightly cool. I've never have figured that one out. I guess it's kind of like trying to figure out what Susudio means, at times. But for credits on the thing, the art direction was actually done by Gary Burton, who did tons and tons of album covers. And his work was monumental in the 70s, especially with the LA scene. And the photograph for the cover was by Henry Diltz. Now, Henry Diltz is probably one of the most renowned rock photographers ever. And I was aware of Henry when he was known as Tad Diltz, and he was in the Modern Folk Quartet, and he played banjo and sang. And they were amazing. They were one of the best of those folk groups of that era. And Henry's still working his butt off. He was in the studio with us when we were making our new album, and he was documenting everything. He's incredibly stealth on projects. He's there and you don't know it. He just gets pictures. But so it was Jackson playing guitar and me on bass, and Russ Kunkel on drums. The electric guitar on some of the tracks was Albert Lee, who Albert's like, one of the greatest guitar players ever. On that, the harmonica was Jim Fadden. The vocal harmony on the record was David Crosby. On that, we go back long, long ways. The drummer Jim Gordon, he actually played harmonica on the album. I worked with Jim so much back in the day, and he was in Derek and the Dominoes and Mad Dogs and Englishmen, but his life took a horrendous turn. And it's documented, and if anybody's interested, they can look it up. I'd rather think of Jim as the player that I worked with, like with Hall & Oates and so many different projects with Jim. But he's still alive, but It's terrible. The pedal steel on the album is Sneaky Pete Kleinow. Now, Sneaky Pete was like one of the great steel players because he thought more out of the box than anybody. I mean, you'd come in and he'd have all these pedals and distortion stuff plugged into his pedal steel, and he just made sounds and did things like nobody else. But one of the cool things about him is if you saw the first Terminator movie and Schwarzenegger burns up in the truck and comes out as the skeleton, this metal skeleton, Pete designed that. Pete also did special effects. So, I mean, this is a guy who ran totally deep. It was amazing. And Craig Durkee did most of the piano on this. Jackson played some piano on the album, but Craig was the dominant pianist on it, who was the piano player with James Taylor and the keyboard player in the section. And so it goes way back with all of this stuff. The producer and the engineer, this is the only project I ever did with him. His name was Richard Sanford Orshoff. And I don't know what ever happened to Richard. You know, we did this record and we had a great hang, but I never did another project. None of us did a project with him, so I'm really not quite sure. The viola playing on this was David Campbell. This was the first time I'd worked with David, was on Jackson's first record. And David has gone on to be one of the premier string arrangers on rock albums. He's done everybody imaginable, and his son is Beck. So like the gene pool was pretty deep there. We did the album at Crystal Recorders in Hollywood. John Fishbeck was one of the owners and an engineer at Crystal. Now, again, here we get this thing gets all convoluted again. John was a friend of Bugs Pemberton, who was the drummer in Wolfgang, and John used to come to our rehearsals, and he brought James Taylor to a rehearsal, and that's how I hooked up with James Taylor, was because of John Fishbeck. And he did Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life, and so there was so much. When Stevie Wonder had his giant, beautiful keyboard, this like one-off thing, I think Yamaha built it for him, it was at Crystal. And Crystal had probably one of the biggest control rooms. It was a big studio, but the control room was huge. And man, when you listen to playback in there, it was like you were having an ethereal out-of-body experience. It was so bitchin'. You know, I loved it. And we lived there for years in that studio, did so many projects. Now on the song we're doing, the guitar solo on it is by the amazing Jesse Ed Davis. Now Jesse wasn't there for the basic tracking, so Jesse came when we finished the track the same day, and he said, well, let me hear this. And they roll tape, and he listened, and he started playing along with it. That, I think, ended up being the solo. I think Jackson said, that's it, that's good. That's it. Jesse did all kinds of projects and stuff. Sadly to say, he passed in '88, but he was a Native American, he was Indian, and represented his people beautifully. He was really a fantastic musician and an integral part of the LA scene back in that era. So this was one of the songs that we did on the album. I believe, as memory serves me, so don't quote me, but I believe Russ played congas on the basic track and then overdubbed his drums afterwards, as I recall. I could be wrong, but somehow it comes back to me in that way. But I'm going to try to get through this. It's a fun part to play. It's got some little nuances. I'm going to try to remember them as best I can. But this is Doctor My Eyes by Jackson Browne. So here we go. Let me pull this up. All right, here. Hold on just a minute. My computer timed out, so I am now back. And missed the gliss.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the view of the snow parade of years without crying. Now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the evil and the good without hiding. You must help me if you can. sweeter than it seems. Doctor, tell me what you see. I hear them cry. They're saying it's too late for me.
Russ. Little sloppy. Sorry. Jesse Ed, man. He was really something pretty amazing. Some special cat. But so, Dr. My Eyes. I'm almost tempted to do it again just to play it better, but I'm not. This is actually the bass I used on it. This is my old Peace Love bass from that I carved up in the 60s. So it's fun to play the original instruments on these tracks too. So I'm going to take it easy. I'm slightly under the weather, not sick, but just tired. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I have a few things I have to take care of today. But I'm just sending out my best wishes to everybody out there. And you all take good care of yourselves. Take care of everybody around you. Call if you know any people that are really isolated in quarantine. Just at least call them. Give them a shout. Give them a FaceTime, whatever you can, just so people don't feel quite so separated by all of this. Because this is where it's really starting to get stressful for so many people, is this amount of time. And so let's try to hang in with this whole thing together as best we can. And shout out to everybody who's working so hard. I was watching a bunch of people being interviewed that are working in the hospitals and stuff today. And boy, they are working so hard. It's just incredible. And the caseload for them is not really lightening up at all. So they have really put in their time on this and paid the price for it. But take good care, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And maybe I'll visit Billy Cobham tomorrow. Just a whole other animal. Give a little Tarian matador. So it's kind of a. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Bye bye.